Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a truly fascinating dynamic, the sweepstakes lure and clearing distributions. We're going to unpack this wild clash between chaotic venture capital extraction and the highly sustainable math of modern digital infrastructure. Let's get right into it.
So, to really grasp the solutions being built right now, we kind of have to face the problem head-on. Our source material captures the brutal reality of modern startup funding with this incredibly dark quote. They don't really care if the horse is killed as long as there is one winning. Ouch, right? When investors are just tossing money around to pump up vanity metrics, the burnout leaves this massive wake of destruction. We're talking wasted capital, completely disrupted markets, and exhausted founders who are treated like disposable commodities.
Which brings us to a really core contrast. On one side, we've got what the sources call liquidator VC. Think of this like a Las Vegas casino floor. It's obsessed with rapid extraction, riding insane hype cycles, and treating founders like disposable lottery tickets. But directly opposing that, we have legitimacy VC. This model completely abandons the casino vibe. It functions way more like a 10-year vineyard. You don't strip mine a vineyard. You meticulously cultivate it. You build compounding, sustainable infrastructure to become a genuine long-term partner. Section 1. The 1953 Sweepstakes Parallel. Walk with me through this timeline because it perfectly connects history to our bleeding-edge digital present. Way back in 1953, a guy named Harold Mertz founded the Publishers Clearinghouse. He basically solved this massive transaction cost problem by packing competing magazine subscriptions into a single direct mail envelope. Ingenious, right? Fast forward decades later to 1995, and this underground group of philosophers, the CCRU, coins the term Hyperstition. And today, the modern Web3 venture capital ecosystem is actively combining both of these historical concepts. They're acting as a literal publishing house for developers. The core mechanism of solving transaction costs hasn't changed at all, only the technology has evolved.
Now, the absolute genius here is in the decoupling. Look at this comparison. Harold Mertz realized something profound. You can use a massive, flashy sweepstakes, like those giant novelty checks showing up at your front door, purely to grab attention. But the real prize? The core product wasn't the sweepstakes at all. It was the boring, high-margin, recurring magazine subscriptions he sold on the back end. He completely decoupled that flashy, speculative gamble from the rock-solid revenue generator.
Moving right along to Section 2, Hyperstition as the modern lure. Remember that wild 1990s term we saw on the timeline? Enter Hyperstition. As defined here, hyperstitions are socio-technical fictions and idea viruses that actively use human belief, economic hype, and narrative projection to literally make themselves real. The CCRU brilliantly called this a functional time-traveling device. So basically, imagine a massive venture lab publishes this highly complex theoretical narrative about the future. By simply introducing that concept into the wild, it creates this massive gravitational pull that quite literally drags the future into the present. Why? Because developers start building the exact tools required to make that crazy theory true. Let's look at a concrete example of this. The venture lab paradigm acts almost like a research institution. They identified a massive bottleneck in decentralized finance, specifically scaling stablecoins, and published the ultimate sweepstakes lure, a generalized n-dimensional spherical shell theory. It's pure dense math. But it was so compelling, so magnetic, that it summoned independent developers to physically build OrbSwap, an app that actually proved the theory worked. The VC essentially wrote the future, and developers built it for them.
All right, Section 3, ERC 7827, the digital subscription.
Before we reveal what the modern magazine subscription actually is, we really have to understand the physical liability in the silicon itself. They call it the wood chipper effect. Modern AI runs primarily on FPU hardware, the floating point unit. Now, it's incredibly fast, for sure, but it's basically a high-speed calculator that relies on lossy, probabilistic guesswork. Because it constantly rounds numbers off, perfect data provenance is permanently destroyed. It's like a blender. You can't reverse engineer the digital smoothie back into its original fruit. When virtual autonomous agents try to run on this guessing game hardware, they hit a chaotic 30-minute memory wall and just break down. You absolutely cannot build a sustainable 10-year vineyard on hardware that is constantly guessing. To fix this, developers literally had to purge the old ways of building software. For decades, the internet relied on a floating upside-down tree data metaphor. It's top-heavy, totally unpredictable, and the source documentation actually labels this unanchored method as a heresy, an apostasy, because you simply cannot float off into the digital ether if you want to perfectly control physical reality.
Instead, they demand the exact opposite, the LIFO root-to-leaf architecture. This requires grounded, sovereign stewardship at the root and absolute deterministic execution at the edge.
And guys, this is the actual prize. This is the boring but profitable digital magazine subscription, the LIFO-JSON state tree. By pivoting to a LIFO, last in, first out architecture, the very last item to go in is always the first item to come out. This unlocks incredibly efficient single-entry bookkeeping. Think of it like an ancient tamper-proof clay seal. You completely bypass the messy guessing of traditional software. You only ever need to query index 0 to get an immediate, flawless mathematical proof of the system's absolute state. No guessing, no floating point miasma. It is mathematically true or it isn't. VCs use their hyperstitional lures specifically to get developers to build and lock their value into these exact bit-perfect developer ledgers using the ERC 7827 protocol.
Which brings us to Section 4, Securing True Creator Sovereignty. Let's map out exactly how this clearing distribution mechanism functions today step by step. Step 1. The sovereign VC studio publishes a high-fidelity mathematical vision, the hyperstitional lure, to align developers. Step 2. They capture the real structural value, consolidating developer outputs into those exact bit-perfect ERC 7827 LIFO ledgers we just talked about. And finally, Step 3. The VC completely transitions away from being a speculative gambler. Instead, they act as a clinical auditor. They validate the human effort and provide the metabolic compute capital required to securely lock in that authorship.
Now, you might be thinking this is all just theoretical tech speak, but no, it's firmly grounded in physical commercial law. Specifically, an update in New York commercial law known as UCC Article 12 officially treats these exact mathematical ledgers as controllable electronic records. This means whoever holds the cryptographic keys leapfrogs over those dusty traditional paper filings. Technological control literally becomes the legal equivalent of physical possession. This actively shields the creator's ecosystem from massive corporate lock-in or hostile takeovers. The law is literally catching up to the code. All of this infrastructure exists to support one absolutely profound reality, which is perfectly summarized in this quote from the source documentation. Manual authorship overrides automated miasma, securing the record of sweat. You literally cannot automate human intent. If you want to build verifiable digital trust, you have to be the sovereign pilot. You have to command the deterministic math, reject the chaotic random distortion of the AI gambler, and secure your undeniable record of sweat. The machine executes the raw rendering, for sure, but you, the human, provide the sovereign intent.
The digital ground is shifting violently beneath our feet. We're moving from a chaotic era of probabilistic guessing and rent extraction straight into an era defined by exact, undeniable mathematical truth. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to really ponder about your own digital sovereignty. As we navigate this new agentic economy, you have a critical choice to make. Will you gamble your sweat and your ideas in the fast, extractive, disposable casino? Or will you command the physics, hold the cryptographic keys, and plant your seeds in the sustainable, compounding vineyard? The future of how we innovate depends entirely on your answer. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the systems around you, and I'll catch you next time.